Okay, check it out. The saga continues. We got our templates, our measurements for our drawer faces. We did them on cardboard, and now it continues. We got this really nice piece of cherry veneer plywood, and we're gonna cut it up, edge band it, and we'll have drawer faces with some beautiful grain. So we only need a small segment out of this piece of plywood. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut it down to be more manageable. We'll oversize it. So I'm gonna take a quick measurement over here, and what we want with that grain is we want that grain, when we look at the front of this, it's gonna be one flowing piece, all matched. So when I oversize it to make it more manageable, I'll take a measurement here. I'll give it to you in imperial, it's 55 inches, oversized. This isn't 55. We basically need only like 52, okay? It's 1400 millimeter. Now when I go in height, okay, it's basically 30 inches or 760 millimeter. That is not my final dimension. So when we look at this veneered piece of plywood, it's basically 4 pieces, and there's some seams in here, but it's such a beautiful grain. So I want to choose the right grain, but I got to take a few things into consideration. Like I want to stay away from this end here. Okay, of course, we're going to cross cut that off because guess what? We oversized the board. We're just making it more manageable, but we're looking at the grain here. And I just have a basic measurement of that 30 inches or 760, and I look at it here, and I'm already opting to choose this quadrant here because it's a consistent grain. This I would probably stay away from. Okay, so I'm looking at that, and I go, wow, I like this corner here. And then, what was the other measurement? Okay, 1400 millimeter. And I'm gonna come over here, grab this, and look at it. And you know what? I think we're gonna be okay. Now, when I look at the seams, I wanna see if there's visible lines. And the only thing I see here, and we'll get a close-up of this is a little, late wood in here, but that'll disappear. So I think I'm gonna start oversizing this piece right in here. And this looks really nice. So the first thing I always do, and there's many videos on the SedgeTool channel, when I grab a piece of plywood, I'm gonna rip the factory edge off. So this is where you gotta be very careful because you want that grain running this way. So you gotta remember your measurements and your orientation. So I know my height is gonna be this way for the grain, so I know that's 760, and I'll mark it here, and I'll come down here to get my rip. So I made this cut a little more comfortable for me. I turned it all the way around. I did measure from here, but I left a little bit for the curve of the blade because I don't have big arms. I always cut comfortably. So let's make this cut. Now, let's cross cut. But you may be saying right now, oh, you need to get 90. No, I don't. The 90s will happen when we cut the plywood in succession for each of the drawer face banks. Now, what we want to do, remember this is oversized, I'm just going to make a mark here at 50 millimeter because this, I don't want this ratty edge. And if we look at it, there's a little discoloration. That might be some of the dust that it was sitting in the lumber yard. So I want to eventually, and you'll see, get rid of that 2 inches or 50 millimeter. So I'm going to look at the grain a little bit more, and I'm going to say, you know what? I want this to be, and this is the front, I'm going to just label this top. Because now we're going to do our rips for our small drawer box faces here, and then end up with the bottom one here. Oh, is this going to be nice? Remember the piece of cardboard we did last video? We got our measurements. Remember our drawer box heights were 120 millimeter, or the fronts for them. Okay, so, and the reason we did, and we're gonna rip now at 119 because we're gonna be putting top and bottom a 1/2 millimeter. So that's why instead of 120, our rips are gonna be 119. Now, before we take the parallel guides to this nice piece of plywood, I'm gonna do a test rip with it to make sure my parallel guides are calibrated dead on. Perfect. Now on to the good piece of cherry. Okay, so you're probably already sick and tired in this video of me telling you about labeling, but it's so important because we want that consistency of grain. We want to like pop. So I got my parallel guide set up. We're ready to start hitting it. Everything's calibrated, but remember those 119 pieces start from the top. So we want to orientate the top. So going forward, I'm going to start labeling everything from the back. And this is our first piece. So I'm going to take it. This is the top of the first piece. And this is number 1. And that's my top. Okay, we got the first 3 rips at 119, and now we're just going to do the bottom drawer front for the deeper drawer. So this is our last piece. Bada bing. So that's why we label everything, because you can get so disoriented, and I have, when I'm trying to have that continuation of grain. So if we label everything going forward now, and I'm going to do it on the back, we don't have to worry about it when we go to what? Edge banding, and we don't have to worry about it when we're doing our final install. So it'll just be one continuous grain flow. Hey, now comes the point where a lot of you have been saying, why isn't he doing this at 90? Well, now we're going to get our 90s. And this is why I love using the MFT3, because I can get super precise 90s. We got, with the parallel guides, super precise parallel rips. So in our original oversized measurement, we did basically 1400 millimeters. This is why I made a mark here at 50 millimeters. What we need for overall length as we pare this down is 1,308. And boy, if you remember the original video for the miter saw stand, that's where we came up with the 3 cabinets put together, including the reveal. Okay, so what we want to do to get the 90 is we're going to cut on the 2-inch or 50 millimeter line. So, but before we do that, we have to verify that our MFT3 is cutting at a perfect 90. So I got everything set up, and I just bring in a really, really accurate square. I got these tall legs on this piece, and if I check it out, I am dead on at 90. So let's get cutting. Throughout this video, you've probably seen me using this track saw. This is a special track saw. It's got 2 blades. We are going to be cross-cutting this veneered plywood, and I want 0.0 tear out. So I chose the TSV60 with the scoring blade, and we'll make the cross cuts, and you'll see what a perfect cut. Now, if you have another track saw, you can use the splinter guard here on your guide rail, and also an outside splinter guard. So let's cut. want you to come in here so you can see this. This is why, look at how perfect that cut is. There's 0.0 tear out, and even on the offcut. But also, if you can zoom in here, look how thin that top veneer is on there. It almost looks like it's painted on there. Perfect. So if you remember, the overall length is 432, but we're going to cut it down by 1 millimeter because even this way we're going to do edge banding. So remember the edge banding is 0.5, so let's cut these exactly at 431, and I'll make a mark here. Bring it right over to my splinter guard, lay it out, but more importantly, perfect, I have a repeatable stop here. And that's the beauty of the multifunction table. I can bring that right in and get a perfect, perfect cut. So if you're unsure about your measurements, make a scrap cut first and then measure to make sure you have it dialed in before going to your really nice veneer. So we just got our 90 on here. We flip it back in and we bring it up to our stop that we calibrated at 431. Let's make a cut. Now, this is really important. This is why I wanted that perfectly clean, because now we're going to bring that up to the stop. But more important, okay, and I'll show you my labeling process. I know that this is the top, okay, and I'm going to make a label here. 1.1. Let's take this over so I can show you. Top, right, heading up, 1.1. Remember my drawers? You can see right here, I labeled that 1.1. So this is how the orientation is going to go as we get this done. And you'll see it'll be absolutely perfect. So I just move it right in like this so I don't lose the orientation of the grain. I bring it down and make the cut. So remember, we're taking this across. So the labeling on this one, on the back, will make the arrow, which we already have, but this is going to be 2.1. And of course, this next one, because we have the top, look at the orientation. You can always verify and double check. See how the continuation of grain. We're going to bring that in like that. I'll do a quick label so I know that's my top. And I'll bring it right in and make my cut. So of course, this one is going to be labeled. There's my top, 3.1. You'll never see these marks. We'll sand some of this off, but this is where the front of the cabinet box or the drawer box is going to be tacked into. So there's the first row of drawer box fronts. Now we'll just have to cut the rest of them and make sure you label, and you'll see why that's important. And also, as we continue in this video, you're going to notice I always protect that top face and I always mark on the back, because that's what you won't see. But you want to protect that veneer face from getting marks on it or dents or galling. So we got all our pieces cross-cut. Now we have to apply edge banding. I'm going to step you through the process. Yes, I'm going to use the Conturo to do it. You can do iron-on, whatever. But the important thing is this is our front. This is our veneer that we're going to be looking at. The object of all of this is to protect the veneer perfectly going forward. So when we orientate it to the machine, this will always be facing up. Okay, we've got all our labeling on the back side, the top and the number of the drawer. So we really don't have to worry about anything if it all gets mixed up. We've done our due diligence in cross-cutting and labeling. When it comes to edge banding, we have to do the sides, cut them, trim them, and then do the top and bottom. Very important. It's because you don't want to see a line of the edge banding. So when you're doing doors, whether top or bottom, we call it the line. And when I say the line, let's just pretend this is one of my drawer boxes. I'm going to pull it out. I don't want to see a line here at the very edge. Okay, so that's why we're going to do the sides first, cut them and trim them, and then do the top and bottom. Also, very, very important, I'm going to show you two different ways of trimming the banding. So I have my cherry banding. It's 0.5 millimeter. Remember how we ripped these and cross-cut them. We did it each increment a millimeter less because this is 0.5. Remember, side, side. So when I go and break my banding to get ready to feed it into the edge bander, I always go about 2 to 3 fingers forward and aft and crack. And I'm going to do quite a few pieces right now, so I can just crank them out just like this and go to town. So I have my Contoro portable edge bander put into the MFT table. It's a special top that this fits into. And the reason I'm doing it is because this is a small piece, just like a router table. I don't want to balance doing handheld routing on small pieces. Same thing, I take it to a router table. I'm going to take small pieces to a semi-stationary table. In other words, this is for the plate, when it's handheld, this is too small. So it's pretty simple. I have it in the table. I have this set to 0.5. That's the thickness of the banding. And when I feed it in, this is the fleece back to the 0.5. I feed it in here. I have it set up. And I hit this. This is called the go button. It's going to grab it. Okay, now, remember, I don't want to rub on this front face. I have my back down. That's why labeling is imperative. So I'm just going to press it again, and it's going to come out and feed through, and I just put nice even pressure on here, just like this. It's simple. What I do as a double check on this is I rub it like that to make sure I have perfect adhesion. Truly not necessary, but I just do it. Okay, so remember, I have the banding in here. You can see there's a check mark up here. I'm ready to go. When I press this button, I'm not pushing or pulling the material. There's a feed roller here that does all the feed on it. So I just hit it like this, and I come over here, and I just hit the secondary roller. It adheres it, and there we go. So I have a lot of this 1/2-inch scrap from the drawer boxes left over. What I'm going to do is, and we have to, like protecting the face here, I want to protect the edges from crumbling because we're going to do a bunch of these. So I have it right here, and I'm protecting the edges. They're fragile, and I'm going to stack another one here, and let's run another one. So we have all our sides done. The next thing we're going to do is trim or guillotine the banding before we trim it. All right, hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to go to the first, what I will call manual way, as I used to do it like this. This is and this is why I love this knife. It has a little bit of flex. If I put it right up against here and just score it like this, I could take it, break it back, and that's a perfect edge right there. This is kind of a low-tech way of doing it, but it works. You just got to have a wicked sharp point on there so you don't pull the banding with the grain off. So there's a variety of guillotines out there to trim this flush. This will speed up the process. I use the one by SedgeTool. I take it, put it right up against there, and trim, and it's a perfect edge right there. So you can really go quick with all these pieces. Okay, so let's trim the edge banding. And the first way I want to show you is with a file. This is a file. It's about 12 inches long. I put a handle on it. And remember, a file is only as good as you have a file card, and I'll show you how to use this momentarily. Okay, now, with the file, I'm using the edge of this, and I want you to see the angle. I'm going to trim the banding. I use this as a cutting tool. I'm not going to take it and go like this. I'm going to put pressure here. I'm protecting the edges. I'm off to the side here, and I'm just going to cut it like this, and you're going to see it comes off and curls. Now, look at the angle I have this file, okay? And I'm very aware as I get to the edge because I don't want to burn through that veneer. And I just flip it over like this, and I do this. Now, this little tool right here is really important because that edge is going to gum up with glue. This is a very hard steel. This is not. These are little tines. They're steel. So when I grate it across there, it cleans the glue back and forth in those grooves of the file, and then I have this hard brush and I keep it clean. This will speed up the operation. This is known as a file card. So let's speed up the operation. I'm going to put the file down, and I'm going to go to some power. This is the MFK 700, and just like the file, when we produced it at that angle, that's what this horizontal base does. Okay, so when you present it to the work, this is here. I have the bit set perfect, and when I take it, it trims it perfectly flush at a 1.5 degree angle. So we got the sides done. We got them guillotined and trimmed perfectly. Now what we need to do is break tape or banding for the tops and bottoms. So a tip I like to give you when I'm doing banding is I like to find a couple of dog holes here so I can just take that and rotate it just like this. It just speeds it up. It gives me that momentum I need. Okay, so now we're going to do the tops and bottoms. And we also have to protect this edge. So what I did is I took one of these pieces of plastic and gave myself a channel to go through because we're going to put both of them on. If I put this edge on first and then flip it around and this was in a way, I would crack this edge banding. So I'm always aware of that. But I also got to remember to make sure it stays flat right here. And now you're going to see why the 0.5. Because now I'm going at length with this. As I feed it in, I'll start right here. I'll press the go button. And that keeps me perfectly in line the whole way to get a perfect edge on there. And I'll just take it like this. And now you'll see, come over here, Chris, so you can see this. When I place it here, it doesn't break that edge. And remember, I'll say it again, protect that veneered face. So we have the top and bottom banding, and it's the same process. The only thing I want to make sure you understand on this is always make sure that that's right up against there and that this roller doesn't get impeded on the longer banding. Always be aware of that and just flip it over and trim and you'll get that really nice edge on there. Good. Okay, so we have a narrow piece here and this plate, you have to angle it. So when I start this, I start it here and I come at an angle. You got to be aware not to break that other edge. And this one's easy. And then I'll just flip it. So when you're using the MFK 700, you may have it dialed in just so perfect, but there may be a little glue residue. So what I like to do is take the scraper, this is a carbide scraper, and I like to put it at an angle, a shear angle like this, and you can see where, and you got to be careful not to dig in there, but that will scrape that And be careful down here. You don't want to pull the banding off, but that'll get you that glue residue. And now, when we do our final sanding, we're ready to go. So to wrap up this installment of my last miter saw station, I hope it was helpful. From choosing the grain on that plywood to making sure it was ripped, cross-cut, and labeled properly, to all the edge banding tips and tricks I gave you. And stay tuned because we got a lot more segments in Sedge's last miter saw stand. So as we always say, be positive, stay sharp, and we mean wicked sharp.